Welcome to the Sales Podcast, session 46. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Welcome to the 46th edition of the Sales Whisperer Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host, and today's guest is Elsie Escobar of Yogi and LibSyn podcasting fame. So, in honor of our yoga friend who will be with us momentarily, today's funny goes something like this. A student went to his meditation teacher and said, "My meditation is horrible. I feel so distracted, or my legs ache, or I'm constantly falling asleep. It's just horrible." "It will pass," the teacher said matter-of-factly. A week later, the student came back to his teacher. "My meditation is wonderful. I feel so aware, so peaceful, so alive. It's just wonderful." "It will pass," the teacher replied matter-of-factly. And isn't that the truth? Nothing ever lasts. Good times, bad times. Our role, our job in life and in business is to keep that calm demeanor, that steady state, learn to really smell the roses along the way. Enjoy the high highs. Do your best to keep from having the low lows. But, I learned this in golf. The secret to scoring well is not how good are your great shots, but how less bad are your horrible shots. If you can just keep it in the fairway, keep it down the center of the road, you're going to be okay. You will reach your destination. It may be a little slower than you want, but you'll get there. So with that said, let's get into the Sales Podcast Creed, which is, today is my day. I work diligently towards my goals, which are bigger than me. I bite off more than I can chew, because only then will I truly know my current limits, and surpassing them becomes my new goal for today. Through education, accountability partners, and bold, decisive action, today will be better than yesterday, and tomorrow will be better yet. I'm ready to produce. If you need help producing better salespeople, please check out my 30-day sales growth program at 30daysalesgrowth.com. And if you need to learn how to produce better podcasts, listen to this upcoming episode with Elsie Escobar. Her passion is yoga, but she has combined the mystical, as she calls it, with the technological. She's kind of a geek, but she's also very much into yoga. So she started podcasting, and then she found LibSyn. LibSyn is who I use to host my podcasts, and has been working with them since about 2006. When she started podcasting, but she is a mom, now has 2 young children. You'll hear one of them at least on the interview. But when you hear people say, "Oh, I can't do this," or "My business is different," you can't get much different than yoga and technology, right? And she's been able to marry these 2 very different worlds into a great success. So please pay attention, take some notes, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Elsie. Elsie Escobar of LibSyn/yoga fame. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Well, thank you. I am just fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, you have the radio voice. You should be on a podcast all the time.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I want to do that.
All right. So everyone listening, if Elsie has to whisper, it's because her baby's falling asleep on her. If you hear the microphone fall over, it's because the baby woke up and knocked the microphone over. So, that's how we roll here. I got dogs and kids come in and out. This is life in 2014.
Absolutely. It's so funny because, I call her a baby, but she's really 2.5 years old. And as soon as I'm sitting here in the kitchen table, and I have my little Nessie microphone in front of me, and the Nessie has this tiny little red button. There's only like one button on it, and that little red button is the mute button, and she just has her little hands ready to press that button. And I keep on stopping her hand from moving there. So if I all of a sudden, disappear, it's because she pressed the button.
So it will sound like this, and there goes Elsie. She's
exactly.
Out. All right.
Yeah.
That's what my buddy would always do. I'd say something. He'd start clinking on the phone. He says, "You're coming in broken and stupid." So I'm like, "Oh, okay. Let me change my line of thinking there." All right. So for those of our listeners in the world that do not know who you are, would you mind? Oh, look at that! I can hear the baby.
Exactly.
Would you mind, in between, providing CPR to the baby, and let everyone know who you are, what you do, what makes you tick?
Oh, sure. I'm actually, I wear like a bunch of different hats, and I suppose, first and foremost, I'm a mama because I'm a stay-at-home mom. I basically do everything from my home, and, so that's sort of like my number one job, which is very nice.
Yep.
And I adore it. And then I also work for LibSyn, which is the largest podcasting host and distribution network since 2004. So we host tons of media. And I kind of fell into the LibSyn world because I started podcasting my yoga classes, which is my other love. So I have like equal loves for technology and yoga. And I started podcasting my classes and sort of kind of fell into that. So I teach yoga and I work in technology. And that's
Get
kind of
out of town. That is the yin and the yang, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
So when did you start podcasting your yoga classes?
I started in July 2004.
Wow.
I know. I mean, 2006 is what I meant to say.
Okay, that's still wow.
2006. Yeah. It's a little bit far.
That's good. So, all right, so people are scratching their heads saying, because I love this, right? Because everybody's like, oh, my business is different, Wes. I can't do email marketing or run billboards or radio ads or text messaging or podcasting, and I could never write a book. But here you are doing yoga podcasting. So this should silence all of the naysayers. Can you please, and we're going to get into LibSyn in a little bit, because that's what I use for mine. That's how I found you, and you guys were awesome. You and Rob helping me recently.
Right.
But let's talk about yoga podcasting. How does that work? What does that mean?
Well, you know what? I really wanted to make it as easy as possible because I was in yoga, right? And I loved doing yoga. And then I got into podcasting. I fell in love with the medium because I was a huge podcast lover, right?
Okay.
So then I thought, I really want to do that podcasting thing. What is the easiest thing that I can do that I could podcast? Because I didn't feel like I really had a show. Like I didn't feel like I was going to sit down and talk into a microphone or any of that. I didn't feel like I could do it fully.
Right.
So I decided, you know what? I'll just record myself teaching classes, and I'll put that online.
Okay.
Because some of my students used to tell me a lot of the time, we want to take you with us. We're going on a vacation, and we're going to miss your classes. And so I thought, I'll just record these classes, and I'll just do that. So I grabbed a little sort of like digital recorder. And at that time, it was the iRiver. It was like the big podcasting thing. It was this tiny little MP3 player that happened to have the capability to record really high quality audio.
Right.
And so I put it in my pocket, and I kind of bought like a $30 lavalier microphone that I stuck to it. And I would just record that, and I would pull the file into my PC at the time and edit it and add a little kind of beginning to it, and I would put it up.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was super simple. I didn't really think too much about it. And it kind of really, since I was, perhaps I have a feeling I'm probably one of the first, if not the first, female audio yoga podcaster out there. And so it was really strange because at that time there was really none of that. There was like perhaps one other guy doing an audio yoga class, and then there was a woman doing interviews with other yogis, and then there was a guy who is still podcasting as well. His name is Chaz Roth from Yoga Amazing, and he was doing video. So that was about it. So I got a lot of love from iTunes when I started, and I still get a lot of love from iTunes, even though I'm not really doing it too much anymore. Right. I don't have time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, here's my little assistant. This is Ella. She is 6.5. Can you say hello to Miss Elsie?
Hi.
Hi, Ella. How are you?
Good.
She has a baby, 2.5-year-old. That's still a baby. I don't care what anybody says. Keep them young. Keep them young as long as you can. They grow up too fast.
Okay, you have to go. She says she has to go. Yeah, the 2.5-year-old has got to go.
Gotta go. And, they call it the terrible twos. I think it's the terrible 18-month to 4 years, actually.
Oh, is that?
But, yeah. But anyway.
Yes, I know.
I digress. So, all right. So you started way back then. Did you use LibSyn from the very beginning?
I did, because I really got in, like I said, I really fell into podcasting,
right?
Because I loved it so much. So I started to research podcasts, and I started to search podcasts about podcasting, and I came upon Rob's podcast 411.
Right.
And then I also found my personal kind of Yoda guru from podcasting world. His name is Victor Cahiao, and he used to podcast a show called The Typical PC User and the Typical Mac User.
Uh-huh.
And I was a huge fan of his, and I started to kind of email him, giving him audio feedback and all this stuff. And then he suggested that I podcast. And then I would ask him questions, and he said, you have to use LibSyn. It's the only thing that you have to use. And
Gotcha.
then in podcast 411, before Rob was working at LibSyn, he interviewed the guys from LibSyn. And so then it was really great to hear their voices. And I thought, wow, these guys are really cool. I really like the company, whatever. I have no idea. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just use LibSyn. So that's what I did from the get-go.
Very nice.
I know.
And I want to get into some specifics about podcasting as well. But what made you decide? Because the lessons you're giving, I mean, you could sell those, right?
Oh, absolutely. You know what it is? I think I started as a service. It was one of those things where I just started to teach them. I could, absolutely. I could, in fact, I'm using another, you know what? I forgot the name of this. I am selling some of them via another website. I'm kind of playing around with it. I've done it for free for so long that I kind of want to keep that for what it is.
Sure.
The kind of response that I've gotten from my podcast has been unbelievable. The kind of service that I'm giving to a community, a worldwide community, is something that I know people are really desiring.
Right.
And they, it's just been amazing that I kind of don't want to change that model as of right now.
Sure.
And I'm okay. I'm absolutely okay, because that way I don't feel the pressure of having to deliver.
Right.
I just offer what comes naturally with the least amount of friction. And that way I don't have to apologize so much for not producing content because I'm too busy, so.
Right.
So yeah, yes, I could sell them. And I have, in fact, created, for my private clients, I do create individualized audio classes for them.
Right.
I create individualized video classes for them. And that's a premium. It's a premium thing,
Right. Well,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
So, I just lost my train of thought. I had a good question for you too.
Oh, it's all right. It'll come back.
Yeah. So you said you're not podcasting as much. I mean, does iTunes kick things out if they're not refreshed eventually, or can things just sit there dormant for a year, 2 years, if it takes that long to add new content?
I think that they do stay there for a while. It depends. I haven't seen anything as of now kicked out. They do from what I hear, they're doing a little bit more of that cleanup when an RSS feed is not active. But you can always reach out to them. I had a podcast that I did with one of my friends, which was called Mudra Moments. And it was two of us yoga teachers kind of talking about the realities of teaching yoga. And it was a little bit, more like not a how-to, but it was more of a community-driven yoga teacher podcast.
Right.
And we sort of let that pod fade. We did very few episodes. We had a really niche, passionate community, but we kind of dropped it.
Right.
And then later on, we decided, you know what, let's do another episode 4 years later. And we couldn't find it in iTunes. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
So then we had to basically reach out to iTunes and say hey, what's up?
Right.
So we have this, and we basically sent them the iTunes link and said that we were going to be updating it and whatnot. And it happened to just show back up. So I think they have all of that information back there.
Right.
It's just that you lose your rankings and all
Right.
that stuff. You're somewhere in there.
Yeah, Apple is surprisingly difficult on, at least not as simple and easy as they could be on
Right.
helping people make podcasts. It's kind of shocking.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I know.
Maybe that's a little threshold for us, so it's not too easy for goofballs to go in and clutter the market. Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it. That's right. Because and there's actually a lot of stuff up there. There's times when I remember when I first got pregnant, one of the first places I went, because I'm such a podcast lover, it's the first place I searched for was in iTunes to find something that would help me for my first pregnancy. I thought there's gotta be something that is dealing with my, motherhood and all this stuff. And there are some, but the ones that I really wanted were actual, pregnancy podcasts. I didn't want tips from moms. That's not what I was looking for. I was looking for information about trimesters and medical stuff. That's what I wanted. And I was super surprised at how many podcasts were up there that were really dated.
Right.
So, they hadn't even been updated at that time. They hadn't been updated for a couple of years. The information was still relevant, but I was super wow, these are still here and they're so dated, and why hasn't somebody else done it? So,
right. Well, if you get pregnant again, you call us. I'll get in touch with my wife. She's been pregnant about 65 or 67 months. So somewhere in there.
I know, that's crazy. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. She can tell me. I'm sure she's had so many different experiences that she can call it,
Oh, yeah. I should start one for pregnant dads, What to say and what not to say to a pregnant woman.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, man. So LibSyn, that stands for Liberated Syndication, right?
Yeah.
For those that don't know what syndication means, it's like your newspaper people, your radio, you hear it a lot of times. So if a show is in syndication, then it can be, it may be on ABC in one market and CBS in another. And then liberated, very nice, entrepreneurs. Right? That's what we want, is our freedom. So why should somebody put their stuff and pay LibSyn for it? I mean, couldn't they just make the podcast and store it on their own website or put it on Amazon S3 or something?
Absolutely, you can. You can do whatever you want. Podcasting is absolutely open to you to do that. I think, you always end up paying for something, right? So it doesn't matter if you get a free service, you are perhaps going to end up paying for that freedom in a different way, which could be, time, effort, troubleshooting, support, all those things.
Right.
And for the most part, because people go for the free model, if they are taking it more seriously, there's going to come a point there, and I'm not saying seriously in terms of even monetizing. I'm talking seriously in terms of your podcast starts growing. You really enjoy doing your podcast, and you want to do a little bit more with it, which is kind of how I switched from. It's the same thing that I did, but not via hosting my media. It was more via hosting. I used to be on a WordPress.com site.
Right.
And, that was free. And when I started, that was awesome. But I didn't know you always hit a threshold, especially when things start to grow. So I did end up paying for it because I had to, export my blog out. I ended it to, I was afraid to do that for so long. I didn't know how to do it. I had to do so much work on it. So that's what you're going to end up paying for if you grow. If you just want to stay there, then by all means, have your free hosting. It's just that I found that when it comes to RSS feeds, when it comes to the way that iTunes changes things or Apple changes things a lot of the time, I feel like having somebody behind you, supporting you if you have an issue is just so great. And also the speed of delivery, especially if you do start to get a little bit bigger as a podcast, is very important, because if you're hosting in different places, they may not deliver the media in the fastest way. They're perhaps at that time, that's not what's happening. And we at LibSyn, we kind of pride ourselves in the fact that we're able to deliver the media so fast to people, for people to consume. And you only realize how slow things are whenever you're trying to download, like a YouTube video at the wrong time or something. And you're like, oh my God, is this ever going to play? So you know how frustrating that is. Imagine somebody trying to listen or even just download your podcast.
Right.
And it's just not playing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's, I've seen that. I mean, I'm always amazed when I upload my MP3 file, how fast it is, published and ready. And, it's, because I have an Amazon S3 account. For those that don't know what that is, it's their super simple storage. And it's a kind of a backup for me. I pay a few dollars a month. They charge you based on total storage as well as throughput or bandwidth or uploading and downloading. And as your podcast grows, you get into several thousand a month. That $3 bill can run up very quickly. But you also have to do your own troubleshooting. So like you said, I'm a sales guy. I'm a marketer. I'm a dad. I don't want to be troubleshooting an Amazon link or my own hosting, which I just moved again. I mean, good grief, what a nightmare.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh. So
I know. And see, those are the things that for some, and like you said, you've got so many things going on. I mean, there are some things, mind you, obviously my podcast is offering from my heart. So the podcast itself is not my business. So I can kind of back off. And there are certain things that I have not done, very simple things like, updating certain links on my website and the small stuff like that, updating plugins that were broken that I've just turned off because I don't have time to deal with that. So, if it was my business, I more than likely would hire that out,
right.
Because it's not stuff I want to be spending my time on. There are other things that I feel are far more important. Even if it was just like, I'd rather write a blog post instead of replacing links in places. Right. So I completely hear you. And that's really one of the number one reasons why I suggest people go with a company like LibSyn, because we have your back. So if you have an issue with your RSS feed, if you have a problem that you don't know how to solve, if something happens with iTunes, if you mess up, you can email support and the support team will get back to you and advise you. And sometimes they'll even take care of it for you, which is like, oh my God, how cool is that? Right.
Right.
So it's just like sometimes that kind of stuff is priceless and it's really not that expensive. So, you can very easily keep something at $5 a month or even just $15 a month. And that's not too bad, especially if you're really gonna follow through with your podcast.
Right. Yeah, I remember I got married in 1995. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. And I went to get a new computer, right? And I remember talking to my cousin who sold computers at the time. He had done it to pay his way through college and still was running his business on the side. And he told me, spend the money on the monitor, the keyboard, and the mouse, because that's where you as the human being interact with that device. And
nice.
So, and it was the best advice ever. Even to this day, I got a good mouse, good keyboard, big old monitor.
Right.
And so having the quality makes a difference in whatever function you're going to do, right? Whether it's golfing or a good yoga mat, right? Or what have you. So, that's why I chose it. That's why I switched over to LibSyn and just wanted to back that up. It's nice having somebody, because like Rob was helping me over the weekend, a couple of weeks ago. And, he didn't have to, and, he had the time and he responded. So, that's good stuff.
Yeah, there's something, and I think, Rob's like amazing. And I think part about, something that I think is very unique to us is that we so love this. We so love this. Right. So it's not like, sometimes it might seem like it's out of our way or whatever, but we really truly enjoy this. So we'll be talking about podcasting. We'll be troubleshooting podcasting things. We'll be diving into podcasting boards. I took a break from LibSyn when I had my first baby for about a year or so. And it was funny because even though I wasn't in the office, I was still doing the same things I do anyway. I was still doing the same stuff. Right. I was still looking at the podcasting boards. I was still troubleshooting for people. I was still, because that's just what I do. That's not even, it's just a bonus that I get paid for it. So.
Well, don't tell them.
I know. I know, right?
It's after hours for Elsie, if anyone from LibSyn is listening, and so you cannot hold her accountable for what she says after hours.
That's right.
This is the disclaimer. All right. So let's get into some nitty gritty. I mean, what do people need to get started to do their own podcast? Because I know they can do it very inexpensively.
Yeah, I would say, as of now, since things have changed so much, you just need a pretty decent computer. Not even a computer. You could even just do it out of an iPad or an iOS device and a microphone.
Well, you know what? Somebody just told me 2 days ago, a guy in my mastermind class or group, he says a thing called Jock Boss.
Boss Jock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a $10 app. I guess you can mix it and do everything right from your iPhone.
Amazing. Yes, you can. It's got different carts. And this is a little bit of info for you. The guys who started Boss Jock are the founders of LibSyn.
Get out of town.
No, I'm not joking.
I did not know that. Anybody did not know that. Right.
Isn't that crazy pants? So those guys are no longer with LibSyn, but they're obviously, they started the company. They started the whole thing. They were in their garage creating the thing that we are currently using. Right. And Dave Mansueto has continued to design this amazing audio app. So that's all his and Ed. Cool. And they both sit around and they just, you touch base with them, and that's why everything is so great, because LibSyn is even sort of like an export area there. You can export the entire podcast directly to an FTP it into your LibSyn account.
Nice.
So it goes straight in there. It's amazing what they've done. And the cart is super brilliant as well, because you can put all of your audio in there, and you can just, with one hit, just create an entire show on your iOS device. It's insane.
Right.
So, yeah. So basically, you really don't need. I don't know how much money I would say between $60 and $70 for like an iOS microphone.
Right.
And $10 for your Boss Jock app, and maybe $5 to $15 for hosting a month.
Right.
And you could get ready to go. Obviously, there are also, you don't even need a proper, in quotes, website, even, although there might be a time when you really do want to do that. But we support, Tumblr and WordPress. Wait, do we do WordPress.com? No, we don't. We just do WordPress.org, so it has to be a self-hosted. But we do Blogger support and Tumblr support. And so you really don't need that. You can have those two are free, and you can create those for yourself in terms of a website of places to have people going. So, yeah, it's actually very, very accessible nowadays.
Right. So what if somebody doesn't have an iOS device? I use a Mac. I had GarageBand. I learned that. It's pretty simple. I had Cliff Ravenscraft on before, and he's very advanced, of course.
Right.
Going through a mixer, I think maybe a soundboard. I don't know. A lot of...
he's got a lot of stuff. Yeah.
He's a big fan of going into hardware, right? He records it into his own digital recorder and then pulls it in. And maybe I'll get there one day. But, I go straight through this call recorder, $20, $29 app, records through Skype, pull that file. It's a MOV. Export into audio, into an M4A, pulls that into GarageBand, mix it, hello, publish.
Yeah.
So, I mean, GarageBand, is GarageBand free? Does it come with a Mac?
GarageBand does come with your Mac. Yes, it does.
Right.
And now they've done the upgrades for free. So you could do the same thing with a PC as well. And yeah, Cliff does record into hardware because he's experienced the fail of the computer, which is true. And sometimes when you do record into the computer, you do have the sort of like that small chance that it might fail, and then you won't be able to have that recording on your computer, and you really won't know the pain of that until it happens. And then you're like, oh my God.
You know what's so ironic is that this is my 46th podcast, and the only one I've had issues with was his.
How funny is that?
And he had it recorded, and he sent me the file because I didn't know he was recording. He recorded it while I was recording it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm recording this as well because I'm just used to it, and it's like I'm just used to always recording my end of stuff, and just because not for selfish reasons, to be honest. Number one is because my time is so hard to get sometimes that for me to do it again, it would be a little bit more challenging. So I'd rather just like, hey, here it is. And I did that with another podcaster as well. Because sometimes Skype, you start Cyloning out and you start to get really crazy. Right. And it's great that I have a clean side of my conversation. I can just send it to you. Yep. Mind you, it's a little bit, it's harder for you to just tell your regular old guest, could you record your side of the conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I always do that. Good. But, for here, we're at this moment, and I'm just plugged into the computer. So I'm not really recording into an external recorder at all.
What would PC users use?
Audacity.
Okay. That's free, isn't it?
Audacity is free, so you can record straight onto Audacity. I did do that when I was first starting out. I did the same thing. I recorded into Audacity the intro to my podcast, because you have to remember that the majority, the bulk of my podcast was on that little iRiver, and that's where I recorded my class. So I would pull that just into my PC. Right. And then I would record just the intro portion of the episode. Gotcha. Although I didn't know how to level my audio. So those first podcasts, even though the content is pretty good, the sound's just horrible. Like I didn't know how to level it out. It just sounds awful. It's like, what is she saying? You know what I mean? And so now it's so easy for me to do all those little small things that I didn't at the beginning. I didn't know how to do that.
Right, but you've got to start. That's my biggest push to anybody, anytime, is get started. Pull the trigger, ride the bullet.
Absolutely. And the only way you know what questions to ask is to do it. It's just, because if you don't do it, you won't have the questions. If you don't have the idea in your head, you won't know how to solve it. So sometimes you'll start recording and then go, oh my gosh, I really would love to add a little bit of sound here. Right. Where do I get that? Yep. And then you'll find that out. It's all through the process. It's all through the process.
What do people need to do to get their podcast ranking higher? Do you have any tips and tricks for that?
Ranking higher, you mean in iTunes?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it depends. You can really take advantage of that whole new and noteworthy thing that people so love, the new and noteworthy, but you really only have access to that. Kind of like the first between the first 8 and 12 weeks, although that is a little bit, not set in stone, like everything in, Apple, right? So at the beginning, if you plan ahead of time, you can do your own little push to your community to go ahead and subscribe and review and rate your podcast for perhaps the first 3 weeks when you launch it. Okay. And I would maybe even suggest, a little extra episode. So let's say you want to do a weekly episode, a weekly, podcast. I would suggest maybe publishing 2 a week for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks, just so that you get more movement into it. Okay. And then have your community, the people that love you, the people that will do anything you ask, even if you suck. Have those people go in and do stuff into your, to act onto your iTunes settings. Because that's how you start to rank. It's an algorithm that is based upon the action that people take with your work when they're downloading your content, subscribing and rating and reviewing positively.
Right.
And all of those things are really, really super important. But, so that'll get you ranking. And then once you rank in the new and noteworthy, then you start to ride sort of like the wave of being ranked. And then people will discover your podcast because you're being featured in that matter.
Right.
So there are 25 new shows, new in quotes, shows that are added each week to the new and noteworthy.
Okay.
And so there are total 100 in the section of new and noteworthy.
Okay.
So each should stay supposedly for 4 weeks.
Okay.
So Apple adds something like 1,500 new shows a week. So your chances of getting selected are about 1 in 60.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people that do that, and they put their information in there, and they don't really think about the algorithm, and they just kind of want to not take it really seriously. So they lose that. And that's why, if you're really serious about it, you more than likely than not, you will be in new and noteworthy. Now, it's not just for 8 weeks. It could be a little bit longer. And then the whole thing is, if people do start to love your content, you will be featured for longer than that. So It's not a hard and fast rule whatsoever. You could be much longer. It could be much shorter. But it really does matter. The biggest algorithm is the action people take with your content.
Right. Well, and that was a hard lesson for me to learn, in that, because really what you're talking about is what most business owners hate, and that's marketing.
Yeah.
They think, I just have great content, the world will find me, they'll beat a path to my door.
Yeah.
Right? But it really is 10% production, 90% promotion.
Absolutely.
Like it or not.
And you know what? After a while, after you get like a base, I would say give it I also resist that. In fact, for the feed, I didn't really do it. For the podcast for LibSyn, I didn't really do that push. Number one, because we had a very niche audience, and our people already knew how to do all this stuff, meaning they already knew how to subscribe. These are podcasters. They're, hopefully these are podcasters that host with us, and podcasters that will share that information with other people. And if somebody found our podcast in iTunes just out of the blue, it would be the less focused audience member. Does that make sense? It wouldn't be like somebody will start to listen and go like, oh my God, I love that podcast, because it's so niche. It's like, it's not like everybody's just going to start listening to our podcast. So I didn't really do that push. And I found, this is really interesting, I found that our internal newsletter drove much more listenership than anything else that we did in terms of marketing, in terms of social media or anything else. It was a newsletter.
Right.
And that, just sending an email whenever, when we, so shall we start?
Speak of the devil. So here we go.
Speak of the devil, right?
After a little station identification break, 2 podcasters talking, supposed to know what we're doing, and one of us had a computer crash. I won't say which one of us.
I know. Yes, I know, because it was my fault. It was crazy. I didn't even know. This has never happened with my poor little computer. It just completely didn't even work. But anyway, so yes.
So we were talking about promoting.
Yeah, we were talking about promoting.
And your newsletter.
And the newsletter, and how important a newsletter is to get people to take action with your podcast. I was super surprised by, and I'm still surprised by that, because whenever we send an internal newsletter about the podcast, that happens all the time, where I see immediately a bunch of downloads. And I'm not talking like, hey, listen to our latest episode. I'm talking an internal LibSyn, newsletter where we say these things are happening. These are the blog posts, stay tuned for this. Oh, and by the way, we have a podcast. Right. So it's not even focused. And I thought, wow, I can't believe that it drives that much. So that makes me think that it's really about being able to have a marketing campaign that is really well grounded all the way around. I also found another gentleman who is having issues with his feed, and it's really interesting, because we think if one thing I'm a big proponent. Is like, if one thing breaks, you have to be able to continue the conversation with your team or with your clients or whatever you need via other avenues.
Right.
I don't know if you know that. Well, because I know you do a lot of work with what is that? Oh my God, I totally forgot the name of the Infusionsoft, for God's sake, yes.
Right.
So you do a lot of work with Infusionsoft where, I don't know if you just heard, but AWeber was having some serious issues. And it really was just doing awful stuff. So a lot of people's campaigns were at a halt. And so then everybody was freaking out. Oh my God, my business, they were in the middle of launches or something like this. And it's really interesting that if you have like a podcast, then you would be able to send a podcast out, right? To update your audience. If you can't do a newsletter, you could have your website, you could put a blog post, you have your social media. So even though you rely perhaps a lot on email, you've got to have the other outlets in case something like that happens, which is kind of like what, happened to us as well. I mean, we're in the middle of recording, and part of the process of why sometimes it's not good to record straight into the computer is because of what just happened,
Right.
That the main source of what you are relying on might break. So how do you support the ability to continue?
Yeah. Dan Kennedy always talks about 1 is the loneliest number, right? Because if you only have one computer, one means of marketing. A lot of people were doing backlinking, right? Things like that just a couple years ago. And then I know people whose entire business went away, both service providers, people that were doing that for business owners, and then the actual business owner, because overnight when Google or Panda or whatever these came out, companies literally became invisible. Because, you got the Google slap, but they had only one means of driving traffic. And so, I've got my desktop, my big iMac, but I've got a MacBook Air. It's always on, so it's got a little redundancy. And I have had to switch. I've had updates or something happen, I don't know, and boom, you got to switch to that next machine to keep producing.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
That's why I love podcasting as well, because it's that, I wrote a blog post today, working on a free report. I'm working on a live event, working on a trade show. I've got my weekly newsletter, got the podcast. I mean, it's what can you do? How many things can you do to generate a lead? And, as business owners, we have to do every single thing that we can within reason till we know what's working.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, just to keep the general communication, just to be able to stay on the pulse, especially when things, when push comes to shove and you really need to get a piece of information out. We have to be able to set up those paths ahead of time before it's an emergency. And I found that the hard way as well with my podcast, because I was not a fan of email. I really resisted having my own email list for a long, long time. And simply because I just kind of wanted you to do the indie thing and I'll just have my podcast, and then, because I don't need an email list. And then what happened is there was an update to iTunes that for some reason, I don't know what it is, but that update brought forth a problem that was in my feed, my initial LibSyn feed, that for some reason, when I put it into iTunes, there was an extra comma in my feed, the actual URL, and iTunes had worked, God willing, all this time with no problem. But then there was that one iTunes update that kind of highlighted that weird comma. And so it wasn't working. So I disappeared from iTunes altogether. So it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, I can't find and so it was fixed pretty quickly and everything went back to normal. But I then realized there was no way that I could contact my people. I had no way to contact them.
Right.
And then I realized, okay, I just, it was like totally humbling
Right.
It was a kind of like I switched my head. It wasn't about, oh, I don't want to be, doing all this marketing. I just don't want to do that. That's kind of sucky. But it was really about service. It was like how to tell my people, here, there's a problem. Here are my classes. This is what I'm doing, so that you keep in touch. And it wasn't about marketing. It was about just plain old human connection.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, I always tell people that, if you've got a great product or service that you offer, you owe it to the marketplace to shout it from the rooftop, so those people in search of what you do can find you and get the better
Absolutely.
service, because the alternative is someone not as good as you.
Right.
So you have to do what you can to serve them. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because, I'm just a money grubbing, hungry, greedy, pushy sales guy. But you're a yoga master. People will trust you.
No, it's true. It's like, it humbled me. It humbled me because you have a thought of like, that's not me. And that's what yoga's about too. It's like, you step on the mat or you decide you want to do this thing, and we all have preconceived notions of what certain practices are, whether it's a business practice or whether it's like, relationship practice or whatever kind of practice, an athletic practice, a diet. And we have all of these preconceived notions without having actual understanding of what it takes. And if we are just allow ourselves to stay open and step into a new process with a sense of curiosity instead of judgment, then you'll be able to find a way that in which that it aligns, or not, but more likely than not, it aligns with what you value, with what you want to put into the world.
Right.
So, I had a preconceived notion about what email marketing was, and I was proven wrong.
Right.
Because I had to, I had to step into it. I hadn't even done it. So
Right.
How could I have a judgment on it? Right.
Yep.
So it took me a while, and, I have my little newsletter and, it's perfect. It's awesome. I like it and I enjoy it, and I'm happy to be able to reach out to my people via that venue. So it's turned out okay.
Very nice. So what are some good resources people should check into to either launch their first podcast or to just enhance it and make it all that it can be?
Yeah, there's plenty. I think a lot. The best place that you can do is just go into your into podcasts about podcasting, because the podcasts about podcasting are the ones where you'll get the latest information about the podcasting world.
Right.
And more likely than not, the topic that you need has been covered. And yeah, you do need a little bit more time. So it's not like you can get it right away. But if you just listen to podcasts about podcasting, you'll start to kind of get the sense of what's out there. There are plenty of people that offer courses. Cliff Ravenscraft does the podcasting A to Z. There's also Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting that has a really great, accessible school of podcasting that you can kind of be a part of. And he does a really wonderful job of walking people through that. The feed, our podcast is really not for beginners necessarily, like not necessarily how to. It's more about keeping you podcasting, because that's one of the hardest things. When you start to podcast, you get so excited, and then you realize that it's like a lot of work. And so we're sort of, keeping you in the pulse that this is super exciting because we love it so much. So you get it to know industry insight and stuff like that.
Right.
So those are the places that I would start. And also, we are going to be putting a little bit more of a how-to podcast out there.
Okay.
And our support team over at LibSyn is really, really great. And Crystal specifically is the woman who creates most of our tutorials and whatnot. And you can find all her work at LibSyn Tutor. She is on YouTube, as well as support.libsyn.com/FAQs. She writes down all of our FAQ stuff and all of she does so much work. It's amazing. And she does such a fantastic job of teaching how to use LibSyn, as well as breaking a lot of really key insight into why it matters. Certain, settings within the LibSyn system and stuff that take it beyond just the system itself, but she talks a lot about iTunes and tagging and categories, and all that stuff. So that's really great. And she is working on something that will be a little bit more encompassing.
Right.
Which we feel is necessary. We need to have something that people can go like, oh yeah, just like this. So, yeah.
So just get started.
Oh, and there's one more thing. An iBook. Rob actually has an iBook for free, a free iBook. I think it's called Podcasting 101. So if you have a Mac and you have an iPad, you can search for, I think it's called Podcasting 101, or you can even search for his name, Rob Walsh, and it'll pop up. It's free. And it's got like basically from beginning to end, he's got how to in there.
And it's WALCH, is that right?
WALCH.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then where can people find you? I found you on Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. I am Yogi everywhere. So, and my website is yogeek.me.
That's Yogeek.
E-E-K. Yes. Yogeek. And my podcast is Elsie's Yoga Class. So if you just search for that, you will absolutely find me. And I do have another website, which is Elsie's Yoga Kula, and Kula is Kula. And that is my hub, my yoga hub. So you can find all my work there. I have over 100 free audio classes for you to continue practicing your yoga at home.
Very nice. And it's Elsie, Elsie.
Yes, Elsie.
Very nice. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. We had to overcome some flu bugs, right? And some
That's right.
Miscommunication and lack of checking Twitter, email, and
oh my gosh, yes, I hear
computers crashing, and we still got it done.
It's super awesome.
All right. Well, it's almost 7 p.m. for you, so I will let you go back to your family.
Yes, I have a feeling my little baby fell asleep because she never came back, so I have a feeling she's asleep.
You have to
go wake her up.
Look behind couches and in the closet. I mean, we find kids asleep all over the place. It's crazy.
I know. I think I just woke her up, so yeah, it'll be good. I know. Just
very cool. Well, thank you for taking the time.
You are so welcome. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
How do you like that computer crash and kids coming in and, just keeping it real? I wanted to leave that in there, especially because I want to inspire you to do your own thing. Get started. Like you heard Elsie talking about. When she started, she just got a simple digital recorder and recorded herself conducting her yoga classes. Threw it on her PC, uploaded it, and boom, it was done. If you're concerned about the quality in the beginning, and you know what? Your 10th podcast will be better than your first. Okay, but if you're concerned about it, remember, these things are free. You're putting up content for free. People can't really complain about it. Maybe they won't leave a remark. Maybe they'll leave a bad remark. Okay, fine. You have a starting point, and you can grow from there. Okay, so you've got to get started. People today, I've talked about this for years and years and years, but the most popular genre of television for the last decade and more has been reality TV. The television show Cops goes back at least 25 years. I think it was started in 87, I think, somewhere in there, or 89, I don't know, somewhere around there. Well over 2 decades. You can't get more real than that, right? So let your clients and prospects see you being real. That's okay. Elsie also talked about, you won't feel the pressure to produce when you just put things out there sporadically, but get started. Things are much easier than you think. She works for LibSyn. That stands for Liberated Syndication, LIBSYN.com. Very affordable hosting plans. I think they start at $5 a month, and you'll get a little better SEO juice out of it, but the reliability is nice. Then I just put the MP3 file, the link, in my website. So you can still listen through my website, but it's fed through LibSyn, and then LibSyn pushes it to iTunes. So, get started, start podcasting, get the word out there. But whatever you do in your marketing, whatever's holding you back, just, like I say, pull the trigger and ride the bullet. Get started. You'll be glad you did. And I noticed, I've had one person leave a comment so far. 46 podcasts now. One person has left a review on iTunes, if you would please visit thesalespodcast.com. Scroll down to the bottom and leave a 5-star review. I would so appreciate it. It'll just help this grow. The more people I can help for free, then the better off we all are, honestly, because the visitors through the podcast, they find me. They'll buy Infusionsoft or consulting or one of my programs like 30daysalesgrowth.com. And then I can spend more time helping more people when I get that kind of feedback and free traffic. So again, please visit thesalespodcast.com, leave a 5-star review. If you want to see the show notes here, it's thesaleswhisperer.com/session46. Please leave a comment there as well. If you got a question, post it, and I do my best to respond to those as close to immediately as possible, but certainly within the week. And again, thanks for listening. Remember to sell different.